Part 4. You will hear a university lecture about a field of study called neuroarchitecture. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Good morning, everyone. Today we are delving into a fascinating intersection of disciplines, where the rigid world of bricks and mortar meets the fluid complexity of the human mind. The topic is neuroarchitecture. Essentially, neuroarchitecture is the study of how our brain and body respond to the built environment. While we have always known that buildings make us feel a certain way, this science moves beyond vague feelings. It uses medical equipment, like mobile EEG headsets, to measure specific changes in a person's physiology, that is, their biological functions such as heart rate and brain chemistry, not just their mood. Now, historically, this wasn't possible. For centuries, the masters of architecture, think of the great cathedral builders or modernists like Le Corbusier, designed spaces based largely on intuition. They guessed what would make a person feel awed or comforted, but they didn't have the hard data to prove it. Neuroarchitecture aims to replace that guesswork with evidence. Let's look at some specific impacts, starting with stress. One of the earliest and most famous studies in this field focused on hospitals. It was discovered that patients recovering from surgery who had a window view of trees or a garden healed faster. But significantly, the data showed they requested far less medication for pain relief compared to those facing a brick wall. This was a game changer. It proved that design has a direct chemical effect on the body. This applies to the workplace, too. You might assume that a cozy, low-ceilinged room is best for focus. However, neuroscientists have found that ceiling height dramatically alters how we think. High, cathedral-like ceilings actually prime the brain for abstract, creative thoughts. Conversely, lower ceilings were found to be beneficial for tasks requiring a focus on detail, such as proofreading or accounting. So, the best office design really depends on what you are trying to achieve. We also see this in what we call biophilic design, incorporating wood, water, and plants into interiors. It's not just aesthetic. Exposure to these textures lowers cortisol, the stress hormone. In fact, in long-term care facilities, this approach has been linked to significantly faster rates of recovery among stroke victims, which is a promising development for our aging population. Moving on to navigation. Have you ever walked into a building and felt immediately lost? That's a failure of neuroarchitecture. Our brains use a region called the hippocampus to build cognitive maps. When a building's layout is too repetitive, like a hotel with identical corridors on every floor, it suppresses the hippocampus. In experiments, this uniform design triggered severe confusion, particularly in test subjects over the age of 60. To combat this, architects are now prioritizing distinct visual cues. Instead of identical hallways, they might place a unique statue or a wall of a different color at key junctions. These aren't just decorations. They serve a neurological function to assist with orientation, helping people unconsciously track where they're in massive structures like international airports or shopping malls. Finally, what does the future hold? Well, education is a major frontier. We know that artificial fluorescent lighting can disrupt sleep cycles and focus. New schools are being fitted with circadian lighting systems that change color temperature throughout the day to match the sun. Early results suggest this leads to a marked boost in student concentration, especially in the afternoon when energy levels typically dip. However, the field is not without its skeptics. Currently, the equipment needed to test these designs, virtual reality headsets and brain scanners, is incredibly costly. Critics argue that neuroarchitecture relies too heavily on simulation rather than real-world experience, questioning if a brain reacts the same way to a virtual room as it does to a real one. Despite these challenges, I am optimistic. As the technology becomes cheaper and the data becomes undeniable, I believe that neuroarchitectural analysis will cease to be a luxury. Within 20 years, I predict it will become a mandatory requirement in building codes, ensuring our cities are not just functional, but biologically supportive. That is the end of part 4. You now have 1 minute to check your answers.